If Trump goes down that road, which I certainly hope he does, and accepts the fact that they will keep a limited enrichment capability, the Israel lobby, Israel itself, and all of these superhawks like Tom Cotton will go after President Trump big time for caving in to the Iranians. So Trump is between a rock and a hard place here. But I think in the final analysis, he doesn't have much choice but to accept a new version of the JCPOA where the Iranians get to keep their enrichment capability, because the alternative, as he describes it, is war. And war, in my opinion, would be sheer lunacy at this point in time from President Trump's point of view, not to mention our country's point of view.
Yeah, well, I've seen in recent days Rebecca Heinrichs, who is a definite war hawker, who's saying, no, there can't be 3.67%. There can't be any percent. So there's absolutely no way we're going to have that. We've shown in recent days here, General Jack Keane from last weekend, where he just like almost seems beside himself with, no, yeah, we need to go with the military option here. We need to give an ultimatum or has already given, he claimed, an ultimatum, and it literally just completely demilitarizes Iran willingly, or we can go in and do it another way, et cetera. But then on the Iranian side, they don't seem to be ready to just back down and just surrender and roll over. As a matter of fact, this Iranian advisor to their nuclear program had this to say.
Iran, with regards to defense capabilities, it is prepared for war. It would fight its own wars. It doesn't need like the Russian soldiers or Chinese soldiers or anyone's soldiers. And Iran's allies across the region, especially in Iraq, and in Yemen, as we're seeing, they will have an enormous role to play if there is war. And they would change the map very swiftly. Iran itself, therefore, would be more than capable of firing off missiles, bringing down jets, firing hundreds of thousands of drones. That is a fact. But Iran's relationships with powers like Russia and China are very important. Russia, China today are much closer to Iran than they've ever been before, thanks to the United States. Many thanks to the United States. The war in Ukraine has evolved the relationship.
I'm going to get to that Russia-China component here in just a second. But first of all, I want to stick with the military aspect of this from the Iranian side. Now, they have claimed, and he did here, that they have pretty robust air defenses. They can shoot down planes. They can launch their own missiles, et cetera, and that they're ready for war, et cetera. But then there's others who say that's just a bunch of bluster. They have shown in the two rounds of clashes with Israel last year that Israel went in, especially on the second one, took out what's claimed anyway to be most of the air defense capability for the Iranian side, et cetera. Do you think that Iran actually would pose a legitimate and difficult military task, or do you think that they're a paper tiger?
Well, a couple points. First of all, the Israelis greatly exaggerate how much damage they did last October when they went and attacked Iran. Iran still has substantial air defense capabilities. Second point I'd make is that when you launch an air offensive against a country like Iran, it's not like you send a handful of aircraft and a handful of missiles in there and you do pinpoint strikes. If you go into a country like Iran with the thought in mind that you're going to tear apart their nuclear infrastructure, you're talking about going after a huge target set, because not only do you have to go after the nuclear infrastructure, and that involves lots of different targets, you also have to go after the air defenses. You have to clean out all the air defenses. You have to create a situation where you can fly over all the targets basically unmolested. And you have to be able to stay on top of those targets for a long period of time, because you're not going to just take them out in one fell swoop. So this is going to be a major operation, right? You're going to war against Iran. Now, the third point is, it is not clear to me that the United States can take out the key nuclear targets, the places where the centrifuges are, with a fissile material, is likely to be produced. And in fact, I don't think we can take out the site at Fordo. I think even if we use our 30,000 pound massive ordnance bomb, which the B-2 bomber carries, I don't think it can get down far enough into the mountain where the centrifuges are to finish it off. But even if we do that, it's widely agreed that it'll buy us maybe 2 or 3 years, maybe 1 year of time before they reconstitute the program. So you want to understand that if everything works out swimmingly here, we're not going to decisively defeat the Ukrainians in the sense that we're going to eliminate their nuclear capabilities forever. No. And in fact, they have said on a number of occasions that if you attack us, we will then go out and develop nuclear weapons. And of course, that would be the commonsensical thing to do. So that's one half of the story. The other half of the story is the Iranians have a retaliatory capability. And what they can do is they can strike Israel. They have lots of ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles included. They can attack American military bases around the region and kill Americans. And very importantly, they can strike against oil installations all over the Middle East, shut down the flow of oil out of the Persian Gulf, and create catastrophic effects on the international economy, which is already in trouble. And the last thing we need is a major oil crisis. So they have real cards to play here. This is not a paper tiger. Again, even if you go in and let's assume that it all works and you take out the nuclear capability at Natanz and at Fordow, those are the two key sites where they enrich the uranium. Let's assume it works swimmingly. You're still in deep kimchi. This is bad news, right? There's no simple solution here. And Trump and his lieutenants understand this. And this is why they're basically headed back towards the JCPOA, although they think they can get a better deal than Obama got the last time, and hopefully they can. But the fact is, the Iranians are not going to give up their centrifuges. They're not going to give up their enrichment capability. So that's where we are.
And what would you expect to happen militarily if for whatever reason Trump and Israel decided, yes, we're going to take that deal, we're going to do the swimmingly version, as you say, and it actually does set them back for a year or so? What will Iran do in response to this? Meaning, will this just be an operation, a week-long massive bombing campaign, and then, okay, cool, that's it, we're done now for a year? Or do you think that Iran would just say, no, you went to war with us, and so now here we go, here's our response, and it's not going to stop, and then we could get into a bigger war? What, in fact, even a better question than that, what would happen if they did what you suggested was possible, and in retaliation, they killed a bunch of Americans in some in Iraq, some in Syria, where we're still at or so, and now then we have a bunch of body bags coming home at Dover Air Force Base?
It's a terrific question, because what you're introducing into the discussion, which I didn't talk about, is the potential for escalation over time. I was talking more about horizontal escalation in the region, but the fact is, as you go up the escalation ladder, what does it look like? I would make 2 points here. The first point is, if you look at the international relations literature, one of the subjects that we do not understand very well is escalation dynamics. Very hard to predict how these things play out over time. Second point I would make to you is, nevertheless, there's no question, and you were hinting at this, that there will be incentives on both sides to escalate. In other words, if we whack Iran and then Iran whacks Israel, the incentives for Israel to go back and hit Iran, and then for Iran to go back and hit Israel, and so forth and so on, is very great. And if the Iranians were to kill Americans, the incentives for the Americans to retaliate against the Iranians would be very great. And where this all ends, it's difficult to say. It would end, but how far it would go, who knows? You also want to remember that we'll go in there in this scenario. We'll do a great deal of destruction, but there will be some targets that once we do the battle damage assessment, we'll see that they're still standing, and there will be powerful incentives to go back in and get them. And then the question is, what will the Iranians do then? And then we haven't even talked about this. What will the Russians and the Chinese do?
Well, yeah, and in fact, I want to go down that path there because earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday, Sergei Lavrov gave a speech where he was talking about Russian relations and how they're eager to expand them in the Middle East.
We are united in our understanding that no society should tolerate the imposition of foreign values from outside, which undermine its historical roots, spiritual and moral foundations, and internal unity. We reject the pernicious practice of using unilateral restrictive measures, sanctions, against those countries that pursue independent foreign and domestic policies based on national interests and traditions.
And of course, front and center in that is going to be Iran, which is a member of BRICS, which is also has a military deal of some sort with Russia to make Shahed drones and some other kinds of military issues, neither of which is Russia would be keen to see destroyed. So the question is, what would Russia do? We'll take them in turn. What would Russia do? And then what would China do if we started moving down a path to where maybe Iran got destroyed?
Well, a couple points, Danny. First of all, China, Russia, and Iran all understand individually that you have to stand up to the United States. You have to play hardball with the United States. You cannot give an inch, because if you do, they'll take advantage of you, whether it's Joe Biden in the cockpit or Donald Trump. You got to play hardball with the United States. Second point that they all understand is that they have to hang together. You're dealing with a very powerful state when you go up against the United States. And the Russians have benefited greatly, as we know, in the Ukraine war from assistance from Iran and assistance from China. That means if Iran's in trouble, the Russians and the Chinese have a deep-seated interest in helping them. Now, how would they help them in this scenario? I don't think that the Russians or the Chinese would get involved militarily or let me put it differently, I don't think they'd get directly involved in the fighting. But I think that once the smoke cleared, the Russians and the Chinese, but especially the Russians, would go to great lengths to provide the Ukrainians with military assistance. Furthermore, I think they would side with them economically, and I think they'd side with them diplomatically. And what should be most worrisome to the United States is the possibility that the Russians and the Chinese, who have not wanted to see who have not wanted to see Iran go nuclear, may now loosen up their opposition and basically stand back while Iran acquires nuclear weapons, which would be disastrous for the United States and also disastrous for Israel. So you do not want to underestimate the amount of trouble that an attack is going to cause us with regard to both Russia and China coming to the assistance of Iran.
And final question here. What do you say to those advocates? And I'm just mentioned a couple there, Jack Keane, John Bolton, of course, a big one, Mike Pompeo, who also wrote something recently basically saying, yeah, just don't worry about all these threats and claims of this stuff. You're a weak stick if you don't go in and take them out here, and we better go in and do it. What do you say to those people?
I say that you folks have basically been in charge of American foreign policy since the Cold War ended. Your view has prevailed at almost every turn. And the end result is failure after failure. And if you look at where the United States is today, we're in deep trouble. And that is in large part due to you. And the reason that Donald Trump got elected was because he ran against you. And many Americans, most Americans, in fact, are tired of your policies because they don't work and they just get us in trouble. So I think it's time for you to basically keep your mouths closed and reflect on the fact that you have been wrong so many times in the past.
No, that's a good word there, and we'll end it right there on finally a positive note. I think as much as you can get positive in something that hasn't happened yet, but we certainly hope that does predominate. We hope that Trump's instincts predominate in both of these situations here. That we get war off the table, that we get one war ended, and prevent one from starting. And then we have all kinds of possibilities for other good things to happen. So let's hope that it works out that way. That's the best we can do today, though.
I'm sad to say you're correct. Hope is all we have at this point.
Yeah, I'd like some better methods, but until we can get some new people back in at some of these higher levels, and well, that's just we'll leave that there for another day. But we have what we have, and we're going to do the best we can to say here is a good path. Go down this one, and we have a better chance of success. And so in that regard, I'm really grateful for what you do to come on to show how clearly there are some good things to go and pursue. Even now, in these 11th hours in both cases, we can still avoid some of the worst outcomes, and we appreciate that.
My pleasure, Danny.
And we appreciate you guys too. Always be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done it before you head out there, and also let you know that we are on podcast. I know a lot of people actually prefer to get their information on podcasts. You get time to watch videos. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Podcast Addict, anywhere you see, you get your podcast, type in Daniel Davis Deep Dive, and you'll find us there eagerly waiting for you. Thank you very much, and we'll see you this afternoon. We have a triple header today. We have Larry Johnson back on, and Gary Villapiano is going to be in front of the camera this time, and just kind of talking about what in the heck is going on with a lot of chaos that seems to be floating around inside the United States right now, even aside from some of these external things. And you're not going to want to miss that dynamic. Always a good discussion that the three of us have, and we'll do that at 3 o'clock this afternoon on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.